The precise moment of the change is still vivid in my mind. The office was exactly as it always was. The constant drone of the computers, the faint smell of printer paper, and the morning sun creating glowing streaks across my workspace. Yet everything felt completely different. The man who had taken a position in front of us was not my boss. It was his son who had just inherited the entire business. "Good morning, everyone," he said, bringing his hands together in a loud clap as if we were at a motivational event. "As of this morning, I am the new chief executive." A polite but unenthusiastic spattering of applause followed. I did not join in. It was not because I felt resentful, at least not yet, but because I already knew what kind of person he was. For 17 years I had been an employee at Bennett Tech Solutions. I was there even before his father had acquired the building. I had a hand in building the core infrastructure. I wrote the very code the company operated on. I designed the internal systems, and I personally trained every new member of the IT staff. I was not merely an employee. I was the very foundation of the company. However, to Ethan Bennett, I was just another anonymous face in the crowd. He saw me as an obsolete relic from a period he wanted to completely erase. His father, Arthur Bennett, was a stark contrast to his son. Arthur was traditional but fair. He valued loyalty and appreciated hard work. While he was not a technology prodigy, he understood the true value of the people who made the operations run smoothly. When his health began to fail, he stepped back, believing he had left the company in capable hands. I watched as Ethan strolled through the office, a confident strut suggesting he was doing us a favor simply by being there. He wore a designer suit, his hair was perfectly slicked back, and his jaw was set with a smug sense of ambition. He had something to prove, and unfortunately for many of us, that meant a complete overhaul of the staff. "Some changes are coming," he announced with an insincere grin. He rattled off the typical corporate buzzwords: efficiency, optimization, streamlining, and so on. "Some of you may not align with the new vision for Bennett Tech." I could feel the eyes of my team turn to me. They were aware of Ethan's dislike for me. It was not because I had done anything wrong. In fact, it was the opposite. During an internship he rarely attended, I had discovered one of his catastrophic coding errors, saving the company from a major system breach he had almost caused. I did not expose him back then. Perhaps I should have. That afternoon I received the email. It read, "Meeting at 4 p.m. CO's office. Ethan Bennett." I did not panic. Not at all. I calmly gathered my documents and walked in. He did not even look up when I entered the room. "Please have a seat," he said with a chilling tone. I did as he instructed. He closed his laptop with a dramatic, self-satisfied gesture and leaned back in his chair. "Sophia, you've been here for a very long time." "Yes," I replied, "for almost 2 full decades." He smirked. "Exactly. A long time to be doing what, precisely? Mending old code? Nurturing the system?" I remained silent, knowing exactly where the conversation was headed. Leaning forward, his voice grew sharper. "I will not spend another penny on a useless employee. You are finished here." I nodded slowly, my heart thudding but my expression calm. "I understand," I said. Ethan seemed surprised, as if he expected me to plead or argue. When I offered no resistance, he smirked again. "Wise. At least you're not overly dramatic." I stood up, gently pushed my chair back and headed for the door. "Oh, and Human Resources will contact you regarding your severance package," he added, almost as an afterthought. I stopped at the door. "According to the contract I signed with your father, severance is guaranteed. You might want to take a closer look at the terms of that agreement." He appeared puzzled, but I did not wait for his reaction. I walked out of his office and, for the final time, out of the entire building. When I arrived at my home, I opened my laptop because there was a critical piece of information that Ethan was not aware of. 3 years ago, when Arthur promoted me to head systems architect, he included a very specific provision in my contract. One that Ethan had not taken the time to read. A provision that granted me full control. I had control over every internal system, every single access point, and every security layer. The agreement stated that if my employment were to be terminated without just cause, I had the legal right to wipe the slate clean. I am not a person who is naturally inclined to seek revenge. But what Ethan had done was not just cruel, it was also incredibly foolish. Now he would be forced to learn very quickly exactly how much this worthless employee was truly worth. I did not get any sleep that night. It was not because I was upset. I had long ago learned to avoid taking corporate betrayals personally. I was awake because I was preparing. Every system, every line of code, and every security protocol I had developed over the years was now at my disposal. Ethan had no idea what he had approved. 3 years ago, when Arthur promoted me to head systems architect, I told him something very specific. If I am to take complete accountability for every system this company depends on, I need protection. Arthur immediately agreed. He trusted me and he valued me. So, together with the company's legal department, we created a clause that most chief executive officers would never have approved. If I were ever terminated without just cause or without the proper severance as outlined in the contract, I had the full right to revoke all of my access, shut down all administrator rights, and remove all proprietary system integrations. In short, I had the power to wipe it all clean. The clause was hidden halfway through the contract under the heading, Emergency System Governance. I had my doubts that Ethan had read anything beyond the title page. The following morning I woke up, combed my hair, brewed some coffee and sat down at my desk with a deep breath. I opened the remote systems dashboard. Every crucial platform was still linked to my credentials. Ethan had not even bothered to reassign my permissions. Human resources had not contacted me. There was no exit interview, no formal handover. He genuinely thought I would simply disappear without a word. I moved my mouse over the Emergency Lockdown Protocol tab and clicked. Immediately, a chain reaction started. The employee portal was deactivated, access to payroll was locked, the internal messaging platform was shut down, and the customer relationship management and client contact systems were all disabled. The inactive servers were still online, but their internal access had been restricted. One by one, I observed the lifeblood of the company pulse and then slowly fade. I did not delete any data as that would have been against the law. However, based on the clause in my contract, I had the right to disable access until a legal solution was reached. It was a last resort, a nuclear option, designed for the worst-case scenarios, and this situation certainly qualified. By midday my phone was vibrating with messages. First, a blocked number called, then it called again. Finally, a text message came in from Leo, the senior IT analyst, a person I had not spoken to in months. Hey, the message read, something is wrong with the system. Everything is going dark. Did you do something? Ethan is losing it. I did not reply. A few minutes later, I received a call from the company's front desk, which I also ignored. Finally, Ethan himself called. I gazed at the screen for a moment before answering, as calm as ever. Sophia speaking. What did you do? He barked, not even bothering to be polite. I could hear panic in the background. Phones ringing, people yelling, and the hollow sound of someone who had completely lost control. I simply followed the contract, I said. Perhaps you should take the time to read it. You've shut down the entire system, he yelled. No, I calmly replied. I have locked access to it. There is a difference. You are insane, he screamed. No, Ethan, I said. I am prepared. You made a decision without understanding the consequences, and that is your fault. I could hear him pacing now. He was furious, but beneath that anger he was terrified. He did not understand how the systems functioned. He believed that firing me was just a matter of removing a name from a list. He never comprehended how much I had built. How do I fix this? He asked, his voice sharp but now quieter. You cannot, I said. You are not authorized to make changes. There was a long silence before he spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. So, what do you want? I could have asked for money. I could have demanded a massive severance payment or an apology or even my old job back. But none of that mattered anymore. This was no longer about revenge, it was about respect. I want you to admit you were wrong, I said, publicly. Not just to me but to your team, to the board, and to the people who watched you dismantle a company you were not ready to lead. He laughed bitterly. You think I'm going to humiliate myself over this? I smiled even though he could not see me. I believe you have no choice. Then I hung up. I spent the rest of the day replying to messages from my former colleagues. Some were shocked while others were secretly cheering me on. They had all seen the clear signs of what was to come the moment Ethan took over. But none of them knew what would happen next, because Ethan had just made the biggest mistake of his brief career. And by the end of the week he would be begging for my help. 2 days was all it took for chaos to spread through Bennett Tech like a wildfire. The systems I had locked down were more than just a convenience. They were the central nervous system of the company. Payroll did not process. Client accounts became unreachable. The customer service department could not respond to support tickets. Even the office coffee machine was malfunctioning because it was connected to the same cloud-based admin panel that I had designed. On the third morning, I received a text from an unknown number. The board is holding an emergency session today. Ethan is in trouble. Just thought you would want to know. There was no name, but I had a good idea who it was. Perhaps Leo or someone from the accounting department. I had quietly gained the trust of more people in that office than Ethan ever realized. Meanwhile, I had returned to my freelance consulting work with my own clients and my own hours, enjoying my peace. But despite my efforts to ignore it, a part of me kept refreshing the news alerts and company discussions. This was no longer just about justice. It was about watching a house built on arrogance fall apart brick by brick. Later that afternoon, a call came in. It was not from Ethan this time, but from a private number. "Miss Hayer," a voice said, "this is Julia Reed from the board of directors. We need to speak with you." Her tone was sharp and measured, the voice of a person accustomed to having authority but trying to be polite. "Of course," I replied. "When?" "As soon as possible," she stated. "We would like to meet over video within the next hour if you are available." She was not asking for permission. I joined the video call wearing a neat black blazer with my hair pulled back, just as I used to look when I gave quarterly IT updates. 6 board members were seated in elegant chairs behind polished mahogany tables. In the center of the screen was Ethan, a deflated version of his former self, his collar loose, his eyes red, and his arrogance gone. "Sophia," Julia began, "we understand there has been a significant disruption to our internal systems." "That is correct," I replied evenly. "And you were the person who designed those systems?" "I was," I said, "for the past 6 years. And according to the clause in your executive contract, you had the authority to revoke access in the event of a wrongful termination?" "Only under specific conditions," I responded, leaning slightly forward. "One of which was termination without severance." Ethan shifted in his seat. I could tell he wanted to interrupt, but he could not. "And you were offered no severance?" Julia asked. "I was not," I said. "Ethan called me into his office, told me I was worthless, and said he would not spend another penny on me." Silence filled the screen. A few board members exchanged glances. Someone cleared their throat uncomfortably. Julia turned to Ethan. "Is that true?" Ethan cleared his throat. "Look, I did not think she would actually answer the question," he mumbled, looking away. "I did not review her contract completely. I thought it was a standard agreement." I raised my eyebrows. "It was not." Julia took a slow, deep breath. "So, to be absolutely clear, the systems were not deleted, only access was restricted. I confirmed this to them. They're completely safe and there has been no loss of data. I followed the established protocol precisely as it was written. And what would it take to restore access?" I paused, wanting to make this perfectly clear for everyone, not just for the people on the video call but also for Ethan. I demanded an official retraction of my termination, a signed letter acknowledging the breach of contract, and a formal public apology from Mr. Bennett himself. Ethan's head jerked toward the camera. "Are you being serious?" "I am very serious," I declared. "You publicly humiliated me. You fired me without cause, without any severance, and without understanding the very systems I designed. You don't just get to simply reverse that." Julia fell silent for a moment before giving a nod. "We will take your terms under advisement. Thank you, Miss Hayer." With that, I logged off. That evening I went for a walk. The sky was filled with low, gray clouds, the kind of soft overcast that made the streetlights glow like luminous halos. 17 years. That is how long I had dedicated to that company. I stayed through late nights, system failures, company mergers, and panicked deadlines. I always delivered on what was asked of me. I never demanded more than what I earned, and Ethan had dismissed all of it with a single careless sentence. But now he was learning a lesson his father had understood from the very beginning. Loyalty is earned, not inherited. I had no desire to destroy the company, but I was not going to save it at my own expense. And if Ethan insisted on pretending he was in control, he would watch the entire machine fall apart without my help. Ethan did not offer an apology. Not on that day and not on the next. He still refused to apologize even after the company's biggest clients started to withdraw their contracts. He remained convinced he could fix the problem himself. Through a friend in the accounting department, who spoke to me off the record of course, I heard that Ethan had brought in an external IT firm. They had promised to regain system access within 72 hours. What they did not know was that I had built the systems like a fortress. This was not an act of vengeance but an act of security. The types of systems Bennett Tech relied on contained sensitive information. Legal documents, employee records, payroll data, internal audits, and client contracts. When Arthur gave me complete independence, he also trusted me to design protections in case of a breach. Ironically, I became the breach that Ethan had never seen coming. By the fourth day, the board was under immense pressure. Key vendors were threatening legal action. The finance department was unable to process invoices, and several government contracts, which required strict security compliance, were on the verge of being cancelled. That evening my phone rang again. It was not Julia. It was Arthur. Yes, Arthur Bennett, the founder and Ethan's father. Sophia, he said, his voice slower than I remembered but still firm. I heard about what happened. Hello, Mr. Bennett, I replied, surprised. I was not expecting your call. I should have called sooner. I've been out of it lately. But Julia gave me a briefing. I read everything, including the contract that you and I signed. There was a pause as he cleared his throat. I want you to know that I stand by that agreement. I gave you that power because you earned it, and I see now just how necessary it was. Thank you, I said softly. That means more than you know. He hesitated. Would you be open to a meeting? Just you and me. No board, no Ethan. I agreed to the meeting. The following afternoon I met him at a quiet cafe just outside of the city. He looked older and more fragile, but his eyes were still sharp. I trusted Ethan to lead with wisdom, he said once we were seated. Instead, he led with his ego. He looked directly at me. You were the one person I knew would protect the foundation of what we built, and now you are the one person who can save it. I did not respond right away. I watched him sip his tea, the cup trembling slightly in his hands. I'm not asking you to forgive him, he said. I'm asking if you will help fix this for the company's sake, for the people who still depend on it. My jaw tightened. He called me worthless in front of his staff and terminated me as if I were nothing. If I come back, I want it to mean something. Arthur nodded in understanding. I understand, and I think it is time we talk about that. He slid a document across the table. It was a formal offer, not for reinstatement, but for a partnership, co-ownership, permanent rights to the system I had built, a public acknowledgement of my role in Bennett Tech's growth, and full authority to oversee the transition to a new leadership. Ethan? I asked, raising my eyebrows. We will be stepping down, Arthur said with finality. After the board meeting tomorrow. He does not know yet, but it is already in motion. I blinked. And who replaces him? Arthur smiled. We are open to nominations. It did not register with me right away. But when it did, I shook my head. I do not want to run the company. I did not say that you had to, he replied. But you should be the one helping to choose who does. That night I went over the documents. Everything was real. The contract was completely solid. And for the first time since I had walked out of that building, I felt a sense of peace. But I also knew I had one more decision to make. The next morning I stood in front of the board once more. No longer was she a disgraced employee or a desperate contractor. She stood as someone whose worth had finally been recognized. Ethan was there, his eyes vacant and his shoulders slumped. He remained silent. Julia then addressed her directly. Sophia, she began, do you wish to restore the system? Sophia responded with a single condition. She would, she said, if the entire IT department received back pay for the hours they had worked to fix someone else's mess, and if every engineer from her old team received a raise and permanent employment status. Julia's impressed look confirmed the deal was done. Sophia accessed the administrative panel on her laptop, entered a series of commands and executed them. The lights flickered back on across Bennett Tech. The company's lifeblood had been restored. She glanced at Ethan one final time, but he avoided her gaze. She no longer needed him to meet her eyes. This moment was no longer his to claim. The system was fully operational again. Emails were once again flowing, salaries were processed, and clients had returned. To an outsider, the crisis seemed to have passed, yet an unease lingered within Sophia. She should have felt triumphant or powerful, but instead she was exhausted. 17 years. 17 years of late nights and early mornings, of eating lunch at her desk, of fixing what others had broken, and of propping up a company that had never truly supported her in return. She thought of how easily Ethan had dismissed it all with a single phrase, that he would not spend another dime on a worthless employee. A quiet ache settled in her chest. This was no longer about revenge. It was about worth and how easily the world could choose to ignore it. Over the next week, she oversaw the transition of the IT systems to a new team, a team she had helped hire herself. She didn't want the company's infrastructure to rely solely on her anymore. If she had learned one thing, it was that no one should ever be a single point of failure, not even her. One afternoon, she found herself back in the old server room. The familiar hum of the machines, the blinking lights, and the faint, cold air were exactly as she remembered. The only difference was that she wasn't there to fix anything. She was there to say her goodbyes. Leo, her former coworker, found her there. "I heard Ethan moved out of the executive suite today," he said quietly. Sophia simply nodded, remarking that it was about time. Leo explained that Ethan had left without a word to anyone, just packed up and walked away. "Did you expect him to?" she asked. Leo shrugged, saying he hadn't, but had hoped he might at least say something to her. "I don't need his words," she replied. "He already gave me his silence when it mattered." Leo gave a faint smile. "You know, we all watched what you did," he said. "Every single one of us. And we weren't just impressed, we were proud." His words caught her off guard. "Proud?" she asked. "Yes," he confirmed. "You stood up for all of us. For every employee who has ever felt undervalued. For every woman who has ever been made to feel like she's just a something. For everyone who's ever been cast aside by someone who believed a title made them intelligent." Sophia blinked, her throat tightening with emotion. "You made us believe again, Sophia," he added. All she could offer in return was a quiet, grateful smile. That weekend she visited her parents' grave for the first time in months. They had been teachers, humble people who believed in effort over ego. When she first got the job at Bennett Tech, they celebrated as if she had won the lottery. When she worked late into the night, they brought her food. When she was consistently overlooked for promotions, they urged her to persevere. She sat between their headstones, her palms resting on the grass. "I did it," she whispered. "Not just for me, but for everyone like me. For every person who was told they weren't enough. For every worker who was laid off with nothing but an empty box and a fake smile. For every unseen genius sitting in a cubicle, making everything run while someone else took the credit." She stayed for a while, just breathing, listening to the wind in the trees, allowing the silence to settle over her like a warm coat. The next Monday she returned to the company one final time. Arthur had asked her to come in not for work, but for a formal ceremony to honor her. She had hesitated but eventually agreed. The entire company gathered in the main atrium. There were speeches, applause, and even a few tears. Then Arthur stepped forward and presented her with a glass plaque etched with gold lettering. It read, "For 17 years of dedication, brilliance, and unshakable integrity, Sophia Hayer." The ensuing applause was long, loud, and heartfelt. But what moved her most was the line of employees who waited afterward just to shake her hand. Young engineers, administrative staff, janitors, managers, people from every department. A young woman, fresh out of college, held her hand for a moment longer than the others. She said she hoped to be like Sophia someday. Sophia simply smiled and told her, "Then be better than me. Start with that." That evening she returned home, lit a candle, made some tea, and for the first time in many years she went to sleep without setting an alarm, knowing that the company would be just fine. And most importantly, so would she. 2 months had gone by since the day she brought Bennett Tech Systems back online. On the surface, life had settled into a routine. The company was operating smoothly again, its future secure. But Ethan Bennett had disappeared from the tech world just as quickly as he had entered it. The news traveled fast. Investors had pulled out, clients questioned the company's leadership, and board members whispered about the embarrassment he had caused. The golden boy, who once smirked at her from behind a mahogany desk, was gone, with no new title or shiny new venture, just total silence. She didn't celebrate, not out loud. She didn't post about it or gloat because she didn't need to. People like Ethan often self-destruct. They believe power is a birthright, not something earned. They think people are replaceable and they believe they will never fall until the moment they do. When they finally crash, it isn't the noise of the impact that matters. It's the absolute silence that follows. One afternoon, as she sipped coffee in her home office, an unexpected message appeared on her phone. "Hey, it's been a while. Can I call Ethan?" She stared at the message for a long time. She didn't owe him anything, but her curiosity got the best of her. She replied, "Yes." His voice was quieter than she remembered, without the usual arrogance or smirk, just pure exhaustion. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from," he began. "You're not wrong," she said calmly. There was a pause. "I just wanted to say I was wrong about everything." Sophia didn't respond, letting the silence linger and sting just a little. "I didn't understand what you did, how much you carried. I thought, I don't know, that tech was just tools, replaceable. I thought loyalty was optional." "It's not," she finally said. "It never was. I've lost everything," he admitted. "Even my dad doesn't return my calls anymore." "That's between you and him," she replied. "Not my business." He sighed. "You don't have to forgive me. I just needed to say it." "Then say it clearly." He took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, Sophia," he said. "For disrespecting you, for underestimating you, for not reading the damn contract. You didn't deserve any of that." She let his words hang for a moment before replying, "Apology accepted. But don't mistake that for forgetting." "I wouldn't dare," he replied. And just like that he hung up. She closed her eyes and let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. It wasn't because she needed his apology, but because hearing it reminded her of how far she had come. A few weeks later, she stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for her own company's new office, Haier Systems. It wasn't flashy, with no marble floors or glass walls. It was simply a space with clean desks, fast computers, and a team of sharp, passionate engineers. Some from her old Bennett team and others who were fresh graduates with eyes full of wonder. She gave a brief speech, nothing grand, just the truth. "I built my career in the shadows," she said. "I was called just an employee, overlooked, undervalued, and underpaid. But I kept building because I believed in what I could do even when others didn't." She paused and looked around the room. "If there is one thing I've learned, it's this. Your worth is not determined by who sees you. It's determined by what you create, how you show up, and how you carry yourself when no one's watching." The applause that followed wasn't loud, but it was authentic. And in that moment she no longer felt tired. She felt whole. Today she spends her time mentoring young tech professionals. She teaches them not only how to write code, but also how to write contracts, protect themselves, say no, and demand respect. Bennett Tech still exists, but it has changed. Arthur quietly retired and a new CEO, a woman named Maria, took over. Maria reached out to Sophia for guidance during the transition, and Sophia gave her one piece of advice: take care of your people and they'll take care of the company. It's a lesson some people never learn, and for others, it changes everything. As for Ethan, the last she heard, he was living in a studio apartment on the edge of the city. No one calls him Mr. Bennett anymore, and his name is rarely spoken in the tech world. But hers is now on contracts, on invoices, on systems, and on the front door of a company she built from the ground up. Sophia Haier. Not a worthless employee, not a forgotten name, but a builder, a fighter, and a woman who rewrote her own ending.